There's a plane. It's literally like 20 feet off the ground. It took out one of the cell towers. People were so scared that they literally ran from their cars. It almost reminded me of a sci-fi movie, you know, like just such an eerie feeling.
Welcome to the Spencer Whiteout podcast. Rated R.
You have some criminal charges, bro. Guess like we're avoiding the shark. Leather fetish.
No, great turbo neck guy.
I'll give you a kiss. You give me your number.
Got checked out a ton, dude. Tell me you felt it.
We're Americans. We're the ones that are descendants from the 1776 musket-bearing motherfuckers.
Welcome back to the Spencer Whiteout podcast. This is episode number 27. Today is a special bonus episode. I wanted to release this conversation with my Uncle Al because he was actually in Washington, D.C. on September 11th, 2001. He has a really interesting perspective on it all, and I hope you enjoy. Let's dive in.
9/11, I was in the Coast Guard at the time. You know, when the plane hit the Pentagon, I left probably 5 minutes before then.
That's so crazy, though.
Yeah, and I mean, even if I was there, nothing would have happened to me because the Pentagon's so huge, and I was pretty far away from where the plane actually hit the building. But still, I mean, I just couldn't imagine being there when it actually hit. But I was stationed in Washington, D.C. I was at Coast Guard headquarters. For me, I would say it was one of the eerie days because it almost reminded me of a sci-fi movie, you know, like, you know, there was even cars at traffic lights that, you know, people were so scared that they literally ran from their cars and doors were open, you know, scenes like that. And then, of course, there was actually more military in the streets than there were civilians, you know, so it was just such an eerie feeling. And then we lived, 30 miles from Washington, D.C. So my wife, Allison, and my two boys, they were down in Woodbridge, Virginia, and I was in D.C. So I didn't know how they were, and they didn't know how I was. And in one sense, I'm sure they were more worried about me because there was no communications at that point. A lot of people don't realize it, but one of the big things that caused so much chaos was when the plane that went into Pentagon, it took out one of the cell towers. Your cell phones didn't work. And if there was areas where they did work, the cell towers are so busy that you couldn't get through. Because I left for work at 6 o'clock in the morning. I left for work. It was the last time I saw my wife and kids. And then, you know, I didn't see them or hear from them until I got back home, which was like 11 o'clock at night that night. A friend of mine lived a little bit closer to D.C. We took a train a little bit. I think we probably took a train about 6 miles. We got out and then we walked to his house. And then I was able to take his car at his house. He took me a little bit further, which got me to about 2 miles away from our house. And then I had to walk another 2 miles to get home. And it was like 10 o'clock.
Wait, why couldn't he drive you up to your house?
Because of the traffic jams. The roads were blocked with so many cars.
Wow.
I think some cars were just trying to get home, and then some people were just trying to leave the area. No matter what level, it was scary, and not knowing, you know, how your family is. And I think it was really terrible for, you know, my kids and my wife, you know, because they knew I could have been there.
Did you have friends or people you knew that passed away?
No.
Anybody that was closer to the action?
You know, they had TVs in all the corridors of the building. And that's when I first realized that 9/11 was happening because they had on the TV the first plane hitting the World Trade Center. And so I went up to my office and I called a buddy. He was over in Arlington. And I was talking to him on the phone. I said, "What's going on? What do you think this is?" And all of a sudden he says, "Holy shit," like that. And I said, "What's going on?" And he says, "There's a plane. It's literally like 20 feet off the ground, you know, from his office window."
So he saw it go in and hit the Pentagon?
He saw the plane in the descent, not hit the Pentagon, but just prior to it. I mean, it would be like you standing on the end of a runway and you get ready to see it land, you know. That's what he saw, you know.
That's wild. You were on the phone with him while that happened.
Yeah. So that was kind of crazy. And then the world changed.
And everybody thought maybe it was like World War III or something, or Pearl Harbor all over again.
You know, at that point, everybody was confused. They didn't know what was going on. I knew in my mind that this was organized or planned because a major airlines, a large airline plane just doesn't fly into a building. That's just not going to happen. At first, when I saw it on TV, I was watching it from a distance. I thought it was like a small Piper Club single engine plane. You know, some guy made a mistake and flew in. But then when I realized it was a commercial airliner, that's when I realized that this has got to be a planned, I don't want to use the word attack in my mind at that time. I didn't think of attack, but a planned suicide or something like that, you know.
And then what was the days following 9/11 like?
We worked long hours. We took different shifts. I was assigned to, it's called flag plot because all your admirals are known as flag admirals because they get that flag on their limos and stuff, you know, when they're driving down the road. So that's why they call them, you know, flag plot. And plot is where they plan strategies and stuff like that. So I assigned to that to help bring in data that's coming in from all across the United States you feed it to the admirals of, you know, so they can plan, suggest ideas, what we're going to do next, how we're going to handle all this, because they stopped the airlines and shipping and everything. So, you know, the Coast Guard and all the military, all the government was trying to get us back to normal as quick as we can, as safe as we can. And so, you know, you're taking in information from all over the country, if not the world. And, you know, you're trying to get who should be back to work first, you know, what ships should come in first. And because at that point, we didn't know what else was going to happen. So we had to look at these ships coming in and their crews, who's on these ships. And we're talking about commercial ships, freight ships that bring in your stereo system from Japan. You know, they're on ships, and how we're going to inspect it. There's all these questions that had to be answered.
Anything else, or are we going to wrap it up?
I don't know. You know, I could say that I served 8 years in the Air Force and I served 18 years in the Coast Guard, a total of 26 years. And I based my retirement speech off of the premise of a marathon. I enjoyed being in the military. And when you run a marathon, they always talk about hitting the wall at mile 21. Well, when I ran a marathon, there's two things that I remember. You have to go to the bathroom. And it happens, for some reason, it happened to me right around mile 21. And so I went into the porta potty.
Wait, is this an analogy or is this?
This has really happened, but I'm bringing it to an analogy.
Okay.
So I ran a marathon. It was a San Antonio marathon. And then about mile 21, I ran into the porta potty and went to the bathroom and got done. And I turned around and my legs wouldn't move. They locked up, you know, because you're running, you know, just they locked up. So you're spending the next 2 or 3 minutes, which seems like days, but they were only a couple of minutes, trying to get your muscles to move again, you know. So that's one thing I really remember about a marathon. The other thing is, along the course of the marathon, they have little aid stations. You know, some of them have Advil and water and baked potatoes, and some have M&Ms, and some have Powerade, whatever. And of course, every aid station had water. But I remember the most out of all that stuff, the water is what did you the most good, plain old water. And so my analogy is, in my military career, avoid the porta potties, stay away from the crap. And the other thing was the ordinary people, just the little guy that does their job every day. Those are the guys that helped you. Those are the guys that got you finished. You know, it's just the average normal person, just like in the marathon, just drinking that simple water is what made me finish the marathon. And the same thing with my military career. It was the average coworker, the little guy, I hate to say it this way, but the little guy beneath you. That average guy is what makes that military and my career successful.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you for your service.
Yeah, thanks.
And thanks for
pleasure.
coming on to talk with me today. I really appreciate it. Shout out to all the first responders and real heroes that work to keep our country safe. And thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor, leave a rating/review. 5 stars is a power play. As always, stay tuned, stay hyped. That's a wrap.
And that's it.